Hey, all, this is Kasak Ma Keperu here. So, Hetep, Namaste. And today I want to talk to you about a very powerful occult secret. And I was debating on whether or not to do this video because this really gets deep into how the universe works, how occult powers work. And that information is usually safe for people who are in the priesthood or who have gone through a type of initiation ceremony. And even in ancient Kemet or Egypt, they didn't just reveal this information to the normal population. This was something that was quietly kept among the priesthood. But I want to get into the occult secret behind Jay-Z's new album 444. And the reason why I said I was debating whether or not to do this, because when I saw, I don't really get into the whole rap thing because I think it's satanic and it's really causing the downfall of society. And you have a certain segment of our population who is fighting to stay in a degenerate, de-evolved state. And those are the individuals we have to purge from society because society is moving toward more ma'at, truth, justice, and righteousness. And we're going to have to deal and contend with a civil war first with those individuals who internally are causing havoc and destruction. And the things that they're doing to facilitate this is to promote hip hop rap music, which at one time was a very positive thing, but as you know, it's been co-opted by the big corporations and it's being used for satanic evil means to communicate negative messages to the mass population, specifically minority groups, to control their mindsets and to basically have them doing things that get them into the prison industrial complex. But I can save that for another video, but I want to reveal this really powerful secret now. Now, for those of you who don't believe that the music industry is run by occult and satanic forces, I can't get into a whole debate over that with you. You have to do your own research on that. There is just a plethora of information out there that you can research that really supports that claim that I'm making. Which is why, again, I don't support like individuals like KRS-One who walks around trying to say how deep rap is and how it's a spiritual thing and how much they love it. That's a programming mechanism. You've been programmed to think in those terms and to love something so much. We know who we are as consciousness. And the truth of your being is that you really have no likes and dislikes. That's a trait that you have adapted through the vehicle, the person, to live in this fourth dimensional plane. And there's a reason for that. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, Jay-Z's album, when he came out, he titled it, 444. See if you can see that. And when I saw that, right away, it communicated something to me. I was like, wait a minute, something is going on here. And, I did a little research and he's talking about how it was named after the birth date or Beyonce's fourth album or something to that nature. But I just thought that was a bunch of bull crap because immediately when I saw it, it communicated a psychic message to me and it wasn't good. And I was like, all right, I see exactly what's going on here. And because I'm schooled in occult powers, I knew exactly what was trying to happen. Now, what I'm going to lay out for you is a secret behind this. Now, I'm not saying in any way this is exactly what Jay-Z in the music industry is doing with his album. I'm not going to say that because I'm not privy to any closed door meetings about what they concocted and how they went about this. But I can tell you, point simple, that if you have been studying in the priesthood, you've been studying the occult, you know that numbers like this, are not innocuous. This is something that is communicating a subliminal message. And what we call this is a trigger. This is a trigger mechanism. So when he comes out and he uses this number system, this is triggering something in our psyche to act in a certain way. This has been done for thousands of years. For native populations, Native Americans, Mayan culture, Egyptian culture, African culture, all of these cultures have been working with these numbers and things of that nature to communicate a message to the tribe and nation. And usually it was in the form of getting them to do something that was morally upright, which is why when you do the research into these ancient cultures, there was no police force to police the people internally because they acted spiritual, they acted ma'at without the need for external laws and forces like that. So let me tell you that this, in terms of seeing these numbers, is what we call synchronicity. Synchronicity is a term that the famous psychologist, Carl Jung coined for a type of causality in the way that happens that is things, forces align to happen. For example, you could be thinking about orange juice and someone comes along drinking a glass of orange juice, or you could be thinking about a friend that you haven't seen in a long time, and suddenly the friend pops up out of nowhere, or you get a phone call from the friend. That's the idea of synchronicity. So many people are reporting that when they wake up, they see these numbers on their clocks. These numbers are like 111 or 333. You know, we can see some of these numbers here, and they repeatedly see these numbers, and they're wondering, well, what does this mean? Now, these numbers do have meaning. And if you, by chance, happen to see these numbers, what's going on here is, again, going back to synchronicity, is your spirit is trying to communicate something to you, because basically it's a message that you need to be aware of. And if you study numerology, and you can also Google this on the internet, you'll find that these numbers do have a meaning. If you see them, Google them, look up the meaning, and then you'll start to understand how that meaning relates to you and your life. And it may be answering a question you posed a number of weeks ago. So, and there is a way to control this and do this. And again, it's a topic for another video, but let's get into the meat and potatoes of this and Jay-Z and what the industry, music industry, tries to pull when it does things like this, because they're all about occult practices. When you see the big, large concerts at the Super Bowl and all that, that's a grand occult ritual to initiate people into a certain psychic mode of thinking, which is usually satanic. All right. So the idea of 444, anything of that nature, again, let me just put this disclaimer that I am not saying that Jay-Z and his record label or company are doing this, but to me, it's fairly obvious what's going on when they start putting out coded messages like this. So this makes use of a trigger mechanism. So they put these numbers out. The mass of the population have no idea what the number means, but it's triggering something in your head, and it gets you to act in a certain way. Now, because it's coded, you won't know consciously the meaning and what it's trying to get you to do, but the subconscious mind knows. And this is because we're all connected to one consciousness. We're not individualized consciousness. We're all one consciousness. So it's called the collective consciousness. And in there, you can hack that, store information, or store programming to get society to act in a certain way. Which is why you have many think tank institutions like Tavistock who put millions of dollars behind researching things like this. And if you do the research, you find the CIA was heavily involved in this, like Project Bluebird, where they would try to hack the mind and implant programming in the mind and things of that nature. So the collective consciousness, because we're all connected, and that's the Ma'at principle, you can hack that and put in place a program, and the program can be activated through a trigger mechanism like numbers. Okay. And what they found this out back in 1951 when they were doing some research on Japanese mesquite monkeys. And what they found out is that on this Japanese island, I think it was called Kurshima, I think it is, Koshma, back in I think it was 51 or 52, they found that these Japanese mesquite monkeys were washing potatoes, right? And the interesting thing about it, they washed these potatoes in a specific way. And what they found out is that when enough of these monkeys would wash the potatoes to get to what we call the tipping point, which is 100, that this information was suddenly carried over to monkeys in adjacent islands that had no contact with those monkeys in the original island. So you're wondering, well, how could these other monkeys know how to wash the sweet potatoes in the exact same way, even though they were separated from great distances? And then they kind of postulate and theorize that there is this thing where if it reaches a certain point of 100, then that information is then carried over to all people of that race or that species. And hence is why we have the 100 monkey principle, or, you can research books like The Tipping Point, which goes deeper into this. All right. And this is going back again to what we call it the collective consciousness. So anything that, it's a mechanism where anything that a certain group of people do will be carried over. And this is what spawns culture. This is why you have people on the West Coast doing things that is suddenly carried over to people on the East Coast without direct contact or without media influence. Okay. So the cabal or those in charge all knew or know this because they have been involved in cult practices for hundreds of years. So they know this and how to create culture, which is why you have rap is hip hop is basically devolving into nothing good. Okay, so they've also done studies, and this study happened back in the early or mid 80s, during the Lebanese war in the Middle East, when they had a mass meditation experiment where they took a large group of people and they meditated on with peaceful thoughts, and they found out that during that period of the Lebanese war, terrorism and war deaths dramatically increased by 70%. By 70%. This is not the only study done at the time. There were many studies done. And if you want to research this, I would go and research the physicist John Hagelin, I think. And he's the one that really talks about these case studies and how the benefits of mass consensus meditation can help to bring about world peace, which is why the ruling elite does not want us to be on the same page, which is why the number one goal is to create factions, have these factions and fight each other, keep them fighting so that you cannot come to a consensus of thought and have the 100 monkey principles. Because if we ever discovered this power, which comes out of the Bible, which it says, if two or more agree, so shall it be. If we ever understood this power, then we would know how to bring about a dramatic change without protesting, without picking up arms, without going to war. We would know how to do that, which is why we research ancient Egypt and ancient Kemet, K-A-M-I-T. You will find that one of the chief things that they used in their defenses, psychic defenses, was the symbol of Wajet Nekabet, and they were symbolized by the serpent. And here we have the god Haru or Horus, which we get from derived from Horus is hour, but we can go into etymology and the origin of words and terms later. If you see right here, he has this serpent on top, which is kind of like symbolization of the third eye or the pineal gland, which chief component of that is melanin. And you'll see he's wearing the crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, known as he's the uniter of Upper and Lower Egypt, but also the uniter of the left and right brain. So, and Haru symbolizes the will, and your will can be directly influenced by psychic measures. So Wajet Nekabet were the yin and yang, but the protectors of Egypt from psychic attack, because the ancient Egyptians were very, very smart in the sense that that they knew that they could wage war without picking up any weapons. They could psychically attack their enemies, and the enemies knew the same thing, because whether we want to believe it or not, ancient cultures were deeply embedded in the occult. Occult is not evil. It's like a neutral power. In fact, George Lucas got Star Wars. The guy, much love for George Lucas, but I think he got Star Wars wrong when he talked about light and dark side of the Force, because the Force is really just one energy, and how you choose to use it is up to you. And when you die and pass on and go into inner planes, there is no right and wrong. There's only, it's just a ma'at, or the Tao, or living according to the way. There's no right and wrong, but that's a concept we use on this fourth dimensional plane to exist and to have order, But as you know, in the Egyptian story, Neter, when he came out of the subjective realm, he created ma'at, order first. But in the subjective realm, there was none of that. So you know that when you are in the subjective realm, everything is one. So you can't oppose yourself. There's no right or wrong. It's just oneness. All right. Sorry, I'm getting off track, but let's get back on track. And by the way, Kemet, let me just correct that. Kemet can be spelled in many different ways. It can be spelled K-E-M-E-T. And Kemet is located in Akebu land, or which we call Africa. Northeast Africa, to be precise. All right. So you see, so the idea is that these corporations run by the cabal are doing research using various think tank organizations like Tavistock, the Heritage Foundation, Council on Foreign Relations, to figure out how to do put it this way, you know how you do cash flow projections for your business? They do human behavior studies, future projection on how humans will behave given certain scenarios. And then they put funding behind that to either divert the course of where we're going or to keep us on course through social engineering, you know? So, and the way they do this is going back to Jay-Z's album is they plug in these hidden meanings and these occult triggers to get us to act in certain ways without us knowing it. This is why Bill Cooper, the well-known conspiracy theorist, I think he wrote Behold the Pale Horse, talked about how people are sheeps. They just follow, you know. And again, if you want the symbolism there, the crook and the flail comes out of that in Egypt, and how sheep would, you know, you see the crook and the flail, the person who was the sheep herder would carry that. But anyway, so here's how they work it. If you've ever done sigil magic, and sigils are very powerful. Sigils are symbols that are used they're magically charged. So if you're looking to improve your finances, get money, you would create a sigil. And that sigil would be a symbol that means nothing to anybody else, but it would mean something to you. And you can create one of your own, you know. And let me see if I can just write really quick what you know, like, for example, a sigil could be something that looks, and right here this is what a sigil could look like. And of course you wouldn't know what this means, but I do. You know, that could mean for me getting $1 million, you know, things of that nature. Okay. So here's what they do. They get a group of people together, similar to the Mesquite Monkeys or the 100 Monkeys principle, and they use certain tactics like terror, or they emotionally excite them, and usually it's through shock treatment. They put them in some type of shock treatment. If you ever saw Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, and the basis of that film was they take this young guy and they put him through a shock treatment to get him to stop committing violence. And he watches these movies, which images, and his eyelids are open. He can't close them. He's watching these things. And it was successful because anytime he thought about committing any type of violent act, such as rape, he would get very violently ill and sick. So this is what they do. And in our cases, when you see these, there's missing persons and children going missing, this is because what they do is they kidnap these children, or they kidnap individuals and they put them through these shock treatments. And these people usually are in a certain demographic, right? They put them through a shock treatment and with certain images. Then those images are then translated into numbers. So the numbers stand in place of the images, okay? And then a lot of times what they do is they can put these individuals into a near-death experience, meaning on the verge of death, or they will actually commit human sacrifices. So what this does is it shocks the psyche, and it puts the programming, the image of what they want somebody to do, and they put these things into their psyche, which goes into directly the collective consciousness. So when it goes into the collective consciousness, it's there. It's a program waiting to be activated. So then when they come out and they release something through mass media and they put the number there, you look at it, you don't know what the number means, but because they've already done these experiments where they put these groups of individuals through shock, near-death experiences, or committed human sacrifice, the power of charging that image and the number is so powerful that it acts upon your psyche when you see the trigger or the activation code. So that's what happens. So, and you're not going to find that you're going to suddenly be a Manchurian candidate and get up and start assassinating somebody. You know, it's not that blatant, but what you're going to be finding on a subtle level is you're going to be acting and doing things in concert with other collective people and according to what they want. And this brings about, as I said before, a type of culture, you know, and which is why you'll see people that are engaged in things that are really diametrically opposed to their well-being and diametrically opposed to life-affirming principles, you know. So this is how this works. Again, I'm not saying Jay-Z, again, got to really emphasize this, that his people are doing this. I don't want to start having people get afraid and going out there and stop buying his album. But what I'm saying is that this is a means and a method that are used by these elite individuals or forces out there. And the idea is that they proselytize through the media that you should stay away from anything that's dealing with traditional cultures, traditional religions. Yet they're the ones behind closed doors, like Stanley Kubrick revealed in his movie Eyes Wide Shut, are the ones that are engaged in occult practices, rituals, and things of that nature. So I want you to keep that in mind, that things like this can be used for a very good a very, very good force. We could change the world if we all got on the same page and meditated and prayed toward world peace. Or if we were ruled by a just government or society, they would put out messages that had us loving one another and treating each other with respect. But instead, what they're doing is they're putting coded messages out there to get us to act in ways in which we fight one another, and it keeps us compartmentalized. It keeps these splinter cells going. And because the only way they can maintain control and power is through divide and conquer, because you can't conquer people who are on the same page, who are acting in concert. So the way that this is the way that they established this power mechanism is by getting you first and foremost to hate traditional culture, to look at it as primitive, as if our ancient ancestors didn't know what they were doing, when in actuality they practice a high science of the mind. They astral projected to different planets and different dimensions. Modern quantum mechanics and physics has said that, there's these other dimensions and realms and parallel universes. Well, ancient cultures already knew about this, which is why you'll see in paintings and hieroglyphics these weird characters and monsters and creatures. Well, that was because when they traveled to these other dimensions and planes, they saw things, came back, and they inscribed the hieroglyphics or the paintings with depictions of these things. A lot of scientists refused to believe at first when they saw these pictures, that they were like, oh, this is just creative license. This is not really, the man with the head of a dragon and the legs and tails. But in reality, this is a lot of things that they saw when they went into these other realms, So what I want you to keep in mind is that these forces and this power does exist, and you are God, man, God, woman, and you too can possess this power. Well, you do possess this power. You just have to awaken to your true self and understand who you really are, and start to utilize it for the benefit of humankind. And when we start doing that, we'll cause a transformation and a revolution. And the revolution can come about not through violent means or through battles and wars, but it can come through a revolution of the mind, because as I said, we operate based on the Ma'at principle, which is the interconnectedness and interdependence between all things. So you are connected to Sally, who is in London, and you're connected to Rob, who's in Australia, even though you don't realize what they do affects you, which is why in African culture, they did not allow the idea of being an individual and having the freedom to do whatever you want. They said, no, there's freedom within parameters, and you don't have the right to just go ahead and do whatever you want. But why can why can I do drugs? Because it's me I'm hurting? No, because we're all connected through the collective consciousness. And if you start doing something like that, that behavior can become imprinted and stored in the inner planes, where it'll be downloaded by someone else, and they will start acting accordingly, which is against the benefit of the whole. So I hope this has made some sense to you. Look for the signs and symbols that appear. Understand that when mass media is putting out things, that these things have meaning. you know, and don't think they're just arbitrary numbers or really somebody's birth date or some cool thing that they decided to title it. No, they did that for a specific reason. And that reason most likely is not for the common good and the common welfare of the population. All right. So I hope you like this video. Please subscribe to this channel or like the video itself. And until next time, this is Kusak Ma Keparu, and I wish you well.